and Warriors, we drinking it down. Raise your voices and stare at this town. We're the champions of craft beer sport. Tall Can Audio, we hold down the fort.
Hello, good listener, and welcome to a Thursday edition of the Tall Can Audio podcast. Matt Robinson with you, as you know, from the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada, here the nation's capital, where summer has finally arrived. It's been weeks of early spring weather, 10 degrees, whatever. The last couple of days, 20-odd degrees, sunny. It's finally here. Hope the good weather is finding you wherever you happen to be. It's funny now that I think about it. This is dropping Thursday morning. The weather, at least here in the nation's capital, not looking so good Thursday. So sorry if I've rubbed that in and it's now actually raining on you. I can't help that. This is the drawback of podcasting. Follow along on social media. Would love to hear from you. I think, based on what we're going to talk about here today, I'm anticipating not all of the feedback is going to be great, but I still want to hear from you at Tall Can Audio, whether you're on Blue Sky or Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about here today, and make sure you're subscribed to the pod wherever you're hearing us right now. I am going to have a pint. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it for a couple of different reasons. I have mentioned this brewery a bunch of different times before. Everybody knows I love it. This particular pint I have had before. And I'm really only just fine with it. This is their lagered ale. It's fine. And look, I'm just going to leave it out there at that because there is nothing wrong with it. It's like a little too sweet or a little too creamy or something. For my liking. As I said, though, it's been nice weather here. And as I'm sitting here Wednesday night, it's still like 22 degrees as I sit down to record this. So this is the style of beer perhaps I would reach for. But yeah, it's a little creamy or something. But we're not going to harp on it because, as you guys know, the Vimy Stout is still, in my opinion, the best stout in town. They make a great red. All kinds of stuff they do is fantastic. This one, maybe just slightly behind those guys in my favorites from the Vimy Brewing Company. Listen, we're going to talk about a couple different things here. Well, speaking of drawbacks of podcasting, I can tease things here. I can stick around to find it. Look, it was in the goddamn show title. That's why you're here. That's why you clicked on it. You all know what's coming. We'll get to that in just a second. I do have on here in the studio, as I sit and talk, the Blue Jays game. Series finale down in Texas. As I'm sitting here, they still haven't scored. That's a fairly familiar refrain. They left I don't even remember, was it 11 guys on base on Tuesday night going into that game? I think they were 3 for their last 33, and 2 of those hadn't even scored. That was 2 for 33 with runners in scoring position. We call that the Kirk effect, him slowing things down out on the base paths. Look, they're having a hard time scoring, and we'll see what happens here on Wednesday night. Maybe they put up a bunch in the later innings. Maybe they don't. It is noteworthy that they're playing in Texas, 8 p.m. Eastern start, and they are back home for a 7 p.m. Thursday start against Oakland. That is a tough turnaround, and, say what you want about Oakland, and it is funny that you're about to play a 4-game series against Oakland, and you're going to miss Luis Severino, which is fine by me. That was their big acquisition over the course of the offseason there for Oakland. But it is rare that it lines up quite like that, right? Teams have 5 starters, and you're going to get the 4 that aren't their best guy. So that's interesting. But this seems tailor-made for a getaway day type game, right? Where you'd play at 2 or 3 p.m. and then get away and fly home. That's why they call it getaway day. No, you can hang around in Texas and play and then fly home all goddamn night and then play again on Thursday. Maybe that's a little soft by me. Maybe I'm creating excuses for them that they don't deserve. But it is strange, is all I'm saying. It has been an interesting first 2 games in Texas. I mentioned all the guys left on base there on Tuesday. Kevin Gausman on Monday was fantastic, right? Looked very much, and he kind of has in most of his recent starts, Rob and I neglected this a little bit when we talked about the Jays on the Monday morning show. That Gausman has looked, for the most part, over the last month or so, like his earlier self, like his 22, 23 kind of self. And I don't know if that's sustainable or not, but he's like one of the only guys in the league who over the last month or so has been averaging like one walk per game or less. The only exception being that one game, I think it was against the Yankees. Remember, he walked like 7 guys or 5 guys in one inning and then mouthed off to the umpire, leaving the game that he was being pulled out of anyway, and got thrown out of the game. That was a bit of a debacle several weeks ago now. But Gausman, I sort of said on the Monday show, right now it kind of looks like the Jays don't have a 1 or 2 starter and 3 number 3s. And look, I don't know if Gausman will get back to number 1 territory, but right now he's going pretty good. And we'll see, if that splitter is going to keep working for him. That brings him back to where he needs to be. Because it did sort of look for a little while like teams were on it. Teams had figured out the difference between the splitter and the fastball low in the zone, and they were sort of laying off of it. And if that's the way it's going to go, he's going to struggle. But he seems to have found it here a little bit again over the last 5 or 6 starts, and we'll see if that could last. I'm not sure how charitable to be about the Blue Jays right now. I may finish this and go out and see that they're down like 6-0 in Texas, in which case, fuck them. I'll be pissed like everybody else as they take their late-night flight home from Texas. The other thing, before we get to the big thing, we debated a couple of times a week ago Monday when Michaela was here, and then this past Monday with Rob, the Ottawa Charge and the PWHL Expansion Draft. Look, I think based on what we saw here earlier this week, Ottawa did lose in 4 games to Minnesota. That was disappointing. Look, if they could have closed out game 2, instead of getting scored on in the last minute and then losing that in overtime and going back to Minnesota tied, maybe things go differently. But, they didn't. So Ottawa loses the final. I did say, and look, it played out this way right to the bitter end. I get the idea, right? I get the fact that overtime is supposed to be exciting. All this overtime, this is a classic matchup, and these teams are so tightly matched, and there's something to that. But there's just not enough scoring power breaking through in this league right now. I'm optimistic that expanding the rosters, thinning it out a little bit, while painful for each of the 6 markets that already exist, will create some turnovers, will create weaker defenses, weaker goaltending, and yeah, sure, in theory, weaker forwards as well, but anytime we have seen other leagues expand, it has resulted in increased scoring, at least temporarily. So I'm optimistic that that's what's going to happen here, but I just found all the overtime in these playoffs not to necessarily be ringing true about how tight these teams are and what an evenly matched up pair of teams this is, and more just about, there's just not enough scoring. Nobody can find enough space to create enough chances. We'll see if expansion can help that. The point being, Gwyneth Phillips, I think, has erased all doubt at this point. And this wasn't the case for me even a week ago, that she will be protected by Ottawa. And maybe you guys are saying, and perhaps you're right, that I am late to the party. But Emrans Mashmeyer was a player that this team was built around. One of those initial 3, Emily Clark, Brianne Jenner, and Emrans Mashmeyer. Before the league started, you were allowed to sign 3 sort of franchise pillars. And that was the group. And Emrans Mashmeyer was a Team Canada stalwart, was the regular backup. She had been part of the Olympic team. Now, she was always behind Anne-Renee Desbiens, but that wasn't a condemnation. It wasn't a bad thing. Desbiens is incredible, and there is no shame in being the second best goaltender in Canada, and she chose to come to Ottawa. And through year 1, she was never the problem for Ottawa. Ottawa couldn't score enough. Ottawa could not put teams away. If you remember in year 1, it was often that Ottawa would lead going into the 3rd, but only by 1, and they could never pull away. They could never drag somebody out back and put a bullet in them, to be more graphic than necessary. They could never just put that one extra goal in that created the distance. And inevitably, when you hang back and you let teams hang around, they score. And now, whether you lose or not in overtime, with their scoring format, which is a better one, by the way, instead of getting the 3 points in regulation, at max, you're getting 2. And so even your wins come with a little less oomph to them than they should. But that was not on the back of Emmerns Mashmeyer. She was fantastic. It was the forwards and the defense that weren't getting it done at that point for her. And the beginning half of this season, she was fantastic again. She was being talked about like a league MVP, and rightly so, through the first half of the season. And then she gets hurt. And I hate punishing players for getting hurt, but that's the reality of sports. Gwyneth Phillips steps in, and she is incredible. A little up and down through the end of the regular season, but far more good than bad. And in the playoffs, absolutely lights out. She walks away from these playoffs as the playoff MVP. And we don't see that all too often in hockey, where the losing team has the MVP. Everybody remembers last year, Connor McDavid for the wouldn't come out to accept the Conn Smythe after losing in Game 7 to the Florida Panthers. And everybody had takes on that, and that's fine. You can go back a little further to the 2003 Stanley Cup Final. Jean-Sebastien Giguère from the Anaheim Ducks wins MVP, but he's still standing out on the ice, so he does accept it, even though the Devils had won the Cup that year. Look, these things happen, but Gwyneth Phillips was full value for this MVP, and I just don't think now there's anything you can do but protect her and leave Mashmeyer exposed. And look, you're going to lose Mashmeyer. She is good enough and was good enough this year that certainly one of these two teams in Vancouver or Seattle will select her to become their number one goaltender. And look, maybe it opens some things up for you. I mentioned that Mash was part of those first 3 that were signed. She'd have a reasonably big contract. The PWHL doesn't allow many details out, but you are allowed 3 max contracts. Mashmeyer would be one of them. Maybe letting her go allows you to re-sign Venizova, or, we'll see who else might get chosen and taken away from you. The interesting question for me, Gwyneth Phillips is 24, Mashmeyer is 30. It makes it, like I said, it's a total slam dunk based on age that you would keep Gwyneth Phillips as long as performance was equal or better, and it is at this point. It is still a bit of a small sample size, and that makes me a little nervous, but I think you have to protect Phillips at this point. I don't think we know, like I said, based on how they protect salary information at this point in the PWHL, what the contract difference is and for how long that differential will remain. Did Phillips come in on a 1-year deal, and thus she's now immediately ready to be bumped up to Mashmeyer's number anyway, in which case you're no further ahead? Are there rules? In the NHL, as you guys know, for the first 3 years of your entry-level contract, you cannot make more than, I don't even know what the number is now. It was $850, then it was $875. It might be $925 now. It's really low. And that's the way collective bargaining works. There are no rookies sitting at the negotiating table, so the first thing that goes, yeah, you can pay the rookies whatever you want. Just make sure you're paying us still. So for the first 3 years of an NHL contract, or of an NHL career, you can't make more than $930, $950, whatever it is at this point. MLB is very much the same. When you come in, you make fucking peanuts for a long time. How long does Gwyneth Phillips make comparatively little compared to Emmerns Mashmeyer? We don't know that at this point. Maybe it's just the length of her contract, and then she can be immediately bumped up. I'm not sure, but I would want to know that before making this decision. And obviously Ottawa management does, but I don't, and I'm the one who's going to sit here and judge them. So let's get to the thing. I put this out on Twitter on Wednesday night that I was headed into the studio. I was going to record something that was going to probably piss off a lot of Sens fans. And that was probably going to piss off a lot of Leaf fans. And that was probably going to piss off me. And so the question had to be asked, who's this show for? I'm not sure it's for anybody, but I have a feeling you will let me know. There are a lot of episodes. I understand when you do a show like this, for as long as we've done it, built up the audience we've built up, there are times when you hear me or Rob or whoever else say something here and you just roll your eyes and you're like, ugh, idiots. And that's the extent of it. It bounces off you and you continue on with your day. There are other things that get said here that light up, Matt at tallcanaudio.com as an email, at tallcanaudio on our social medias, and we start to hear things. It's not just that it bounced off you and rolled away. You had to tell me how stupid this was. We'll see if this is one of those. Is it possible that Mitch Marner to the Ottawa Senators is a thing? And I'm not even saying is it likely. Is it possible? We saw a tweet last week from Pierre LeBrun that said teams interested in Marner that he had heard about so far were Detroit, Chicago, Anaheim, Los Angeles. LA surprised me a little bit. LA is really good. I actually don't know what their cap situation looks like right now. I should have dove into that before coming in here, but I don't expect to see him land there. Anaheim has room, and they're young, and they're on the up and come. Chicago is young. They have room. They're on the up and come, supposedly. Detroit's weird. They have a lot of young pieces. They also have a lot of old pieces that Yzerman keeps signing. They have been in the race. They're supposed to be a little further ahead than Chicago and Anaheim, but they are also desperately looking for a top-line piece to help them move forward. In that same tweet from Pierre LeBrun, as I said, he listed it as teams interested in Marner, LA, Anaheim, Chicago, Detroit. Teams of interest to Marner, Vegas and Florida. Yeah. Tax-free states with very good teams. Got it. And look, this is going to be overly shitty, overly dismissive. But if that guy fucks off to a team where he is just a guy, it will cement permanently what everybody thought. Can't do it. Cannot be the guy on his own. And look, that's okay. That's okay. Lots of, I would say, what are there? 32 teams in the league. So, what do we got? 800 guys in the league, 750 guys in the league. All but 32 of them aren't the guy on their team. One of the things with Marner has been, though, I want to be the guy. Or at least I want to be treated like the guy. And I certainly want to be paid like the guy. Going into his last contract, I want to be paid like Matthews. I'm no less valuable than Matthews. And at the time, that was absurd. Matthews has had his struggles this year and certainly in a couple of years in the playoffs. I still think it's not particularly... The point of the game is to score goals, and Austin Matthews has always done that better than Mitch Marner. Does it mean Mitch Marner isn't valuable? Of course it doesn't. He's a 100-point player now. Because for years, a lot of people say, he's like a 100-point winner. He'd never done that. It was like people saying Phil Kessel was a 40-goal guy. Phil Kessel has a lot of 37, 38-goal seasons, has never yet been a 40-goal guy. We round up and then proclaim it as fact. No, now he is a 100-point guy. And he's a good penalty kill guy, good defensive guy. He's a good guy, by all accounts. But that framing immediately places you in a place where it appears, fuck it. I'll just go where they're already good and they already have pieces and I won't have to be the guy. But I still hope I get paid like the guy. And look, neither one of those teams are going to pay Mitch Marner 13, 14 million, you wouldn't think. Tax-free states, there's the discount that comes with that. And if you're coming in there, hands up already, waving the white flag, going, I get it, I won't be the guy here, then they get to go, then we don't pay you like the guy here. Chicago, and the teams that are interested in him, those all make sense to me. We'll worry about the playoffs when we get there. For now, we have to get there. Mitch Marner can help those teams get there if he chooses to. What if he's not sold on leaving Canada? He's just sold on leaving Toronto. What if it's not so much being under a spotlight, but being under the spotlight that he can't handle? Let's keep in mind, and there are people roasting him for this out there, and this is the one thing that Mitch did this year that makes total sense to me and I totally empathize with. When they went to him at the trade deadline and said, hey, how about fucking off to Carolina so we can get Rantanen? Yeah, my wife's 7 months pregnant. Go piss up a rope. I'm not going anywhere. And we as hockey fans, we don't like that. You should do the thing that would be best for my team as I feel today. But this is also a workplace. And he negotiated a contract that said, I have control over where I go and when I go. And you are probably not going to convince me to leave my home where my wife's parents and family are, where my parents and family are, and piss off down to Carolina, where I've never spent more than a night on a road trip, away, either bringing my 7-month pregnant wife with me or being away from her at this time. He gave birth between round 1 and 2. Carolina's still playing now, which means he would have been away for that, or both of them would have been away for that. I get it. It would have been nice to get Rantanen in and see what he looked like as a Leaf. Although the Conn Smythe talk around him has dwindled quite a bit. He got off to a slow start in those in the playoffs for Dallas. Everyone sees the bust we thought he was. Then all of a sudden he has the incredible games 5, 6, and 7. Then he kind of went quiet again. He had like an incredible week, did Rantanen, and then he's sort of faded back. And, they're sitting here as I'm talking to you down 3-1 to Edmonton, and they're looking at him to get going too. So as far as Marner goes and saying, yeah, I'm not being traded at the deadline, I get it. I wouldn't have said yes either. And look, I'm annoyed with the guy at how all this is played out and the way this has been handled. I'm annoyed with him. I'm annoyed with Treliving. I'm annoyed with Shanahan, who's gone. But fuck it. It is what it is at this point. He did collapse in the playoffs again. It didn't look good. He was not the only one who collapsed in the playoffs again. So this is far from being a just him thing. I do believe he's 90% gone, 95% gone. I don't think it's impossible, believe it or not, that after emotions cool and maybe he sees what's out there for him in the market on July 1st, that he doesn't circle back to Toronto and say, you want a match or not? I think that's possible, but I do think it's very unlikely. But all those things I just mentioned about Mitch and the wanting to get out from under what has now become a bad workplace, the brightest spotlight in the league in Toronto, but also not necessarily during the season while his wife was pregnant being wanting to stray far from home, makes me wonder if Ottawa would be a consideration. Now, look, we can get into, because I can hear some of you already doing that eye roll thing. Yes, I can hear that, even here, before you've done it. We can talk about the cap gymnastics that Ottawa would have to do and whether or not Ottawa should be interested or not. But I wonder if to Mitch that would be appealing. If you can pay me roughly what I think I'm worth, I remain in a Canadian market, which is important to me if I feel like I'm the guy and I'm a star, and he is. Believe it or not, happy or not, he's going to be on your Olympic team next winter. I can go to Ottawa. I can be no more than 4 hours away from the GTA, where my wife's family is, where my family is. And the spotlight will be just a little bit less. Now, if he feels like I want to be the man, I'm not sure Ottawa's the right fit. Brady is the man here. Now, Brady, in a world where Mitch Marner walks into the Sens locker room, Brady is not the top scorer on the league. Mitch Marner, whether he does another 90 points, 100 points, whatever it might be, Mitch Marner will likely pass Stützle and become the top point getter in Ottawa. But this will be Brady's locker room, Brady's team. Right now, Brady isn't the most talented guy on the team, but he is the face of the team. It is his team. Mitch would have to be okay with that. And you just look at the way the team is built. Could you play Mitch with Stützle and Brady on the top line? Sure you could. Might be pretty good. Brady making noise along the boards, making big hits, making plays out into the middle, setting up Tim Stützle, who's no slouch as a playmaker himself, but has some big finish in his game. You know, in those moments where it doesn't come off the cycle and Brady's thing hasn't worked out, maybe it's Mitch on the rush. Maybe it's Mitch from the half wall setting up Stützle or dishing it back out to Sanderson late. There are things that Mitch could bring to that lineup that would be really interesting. Ottawa's power play, if I have this correct right now, where is it here? Was 11th last regular season. It's not bad. You know, just outside the top 10 in a 32-team league. But Mitch could help that. Maybe you're looking at the penalty kill, which was 19th ranked last year. Mitch can help you with that and has really good instincts on the PK. Maybe you don't put Mitch at 5-on-5 with Stützle and Brady. You count on them to carry their own line, as they should. And this would be tough because if you're paying Mitch to come into Ottawa, you know, you're paying him like a top-line guy. But could he play alongside Dylan Cousins and get him going? Get what you need out of Dylan Cousins to justify that trade. And let's face it. Let's be real. Dylan Cousins, after a honeymoon week or two after arriving from Buffalo, kind of went back to what he had been in Buffalo. He hadn't looked that good, and he was pretty quiet in the playoffs. If you could put a Mitch Marner beside him, does that help solve those issues? Does that create opportunities for him? And is that what he needs? Or is he... Yeah, it's too negative to say is he, you know, he is what he is. No, he's a young guy. You got to do whatever you can to get him going to help justify that trade. And I understand Josh Norris finished out the regular season in Buffalo barely playing after that trade. So when I say justify that trade, the bar to clear is pretty low. But that, I think you need a higher standard than that. Is Dylan Cousins going to be better and more healthy than Josh Norris? Or is Dylan Cousins going to fulfill his potential and be a potential... You can't use potential twice in one sentence, but, you know, be a top 6 force for the Ottawa Senators. Maybe Mitch could help with that. I think he helps your PK. I think he helps your power play. I think he stays in Canada close to home where he would still be a star, but does not have to be the star. I don't know. Now, Ottawa's got every team's got cap space with the cap going up, but comparatively speaking, relatively speaking, Ottawa's got like $8 in cap space. There are people becoming free agents. There are going to be people leaving. You would have to accept that right now, Claude Giroux is gone. And look, I'm not going to speak for Sens fans. Maybe you're already going, then fuck that. Maybe before we got into any of this, you were already saying, fuck that. And Claude Giroux is just the capper. Not giving up Claude Giroux for Mitch Marner. That's fine. But Mitch Marner is significantly younger. Would be around significantly longer. And so it would be something, I think, that you would at least have to consider. The other point would be Ottawa is ahead of Detroit, Chicago, Anaheim. Not Los Angeles. The LA thing is weird to me, to think that they're interested in Mitch. And look, maybe it shouldn't be, but like they're kind of doing their own thing out there. And I don't really see how he fits. Whereas those other 3, Anaheim, Chicago, and Detroit, everybody can see how he clearly fits. Ottawa is ahead of those 3 in the sense that they already made a wild card. They are looking to move up and not be a wild card next year. They want to become, a divisional team somewhere in one of those first 3 spots. And so where those other 3 teams can say, we just want Mitch to help us get to the playoffs and we'll worry about the playoffs later, Ottawa has already shown we can now get to the playoffs. We have to worry about a playoff performer. Now, would it go the exact same way for Mitch in Ottawa that it did in Toronto? Well, we have no way of knowing, but all we can work off of are those first 8 or 9 years where it did not go well for him in the playoffs. And maybe that would carry over to Ottawa. Or maybe a Brady Tkachuk is capable of dragging him into the fight with everyone else. Toronto never had a Brady Tkachuk. Toronto never had that guy that was willing to step, short of like Wayne Simmons in his waning years on the 4th line, or, guys like that who were happy to do it but weren't part of that top mix. Maybe Brady's a guy who goes, we're all diving headfirst into this fucking pool, and if you're not diving with us, I'm dragging you in with us. Maybe that can happen, but it would be a concern for a team like Ottawa, who is ahead of those other teams in the development curve, and saying, yeah, Mitch can absolutely help us get out of the wild card mix and into that top 3 mix with what he's going to do in the regular season, but I would be a little worried about him in the playoffs. Or maybe you just go, nah, get him out of Toronto, the spotlight, that room that obviously gets tense as playoff rounds go on, and into a different group where, Brady's going to do Brady things, and that's going to pull everyone into the fight. It would be something to consider. It has its negatives. But I wonder, because Detroit is close to home. He could go to Detroit, get all the same benefits as being in Ottawa, right? Chicago's not that far, but Detroit is right there. If you're trying to get out of Toronto but stay close to the GTA, you could choose Detroit. But you could choose Ottawa. It would still matter a little more to be in Canada. Twist the knife, right? Be on the other side of that rivalry. Maybe be a team next year that instead of is the underdog to Toronto, you're a part of twisting that knife and pushing Toronto out. I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I think it's more on the table than people think. I don't think it's the favorite. I don't think it's the most likely outcome or anything like that. I don't think it's like written in stone. He's going to Ottawa. I think there's a lot of baggage for a lot of people, mainly Sens fans and Mitch himself. But I think it might have its place. Have him come in, quarterback a power play, and be setting up, Stützle, and have him be a part of a penalty kill that was, pretty mad last year. And maybe have him, instead of being the guy who sets up Tim Stützle, be the guy who sets up and makes that Dylan Cousins acquisition really shine. We'll see. Bugs me a bit. It bugs me a bit to hear that he's thinking about Vegas and Florida. Because it does sing off of that, I'm just going to go in, and if you can't beat him, join him. Vegas makes sense. Nobody in Vegas seems to be ripping Jack Eichel for having back-to-back shitty playoffs. Bring in Mitch. Why not? Nobody seems to notice. I get why that would be appealing to Mitch. Off to Florida. I don't know if they let Ekblad and Bennett. Can you imagine if Mitch goes and signs for $10 million? Take that Florida no state tax discount, which is actually less than he's making now, and then we sign 30-year-old Sam Bennett in Toronto. Ugh. But you go to Ottawa and you stay in Canada, stay close to home, be a part of a team on the upswing. Let someone else be the face of the franchise. I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds. It might be exactly as upsetting as it sounds, but I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds. That's enough. You'll let me know throughout the day on Thursday, I'm quite certain, whether you think Mitch to the Sens is a possibility and whether or not it's something you'd consider. A, because you think it's good for the Sens. B, because you think it'd be fun to twist the knife and go win with that guy. C, there's, in your mind, there's just no chance. We can't risk having him still be bad in the playoffs when he joins us. If you're a Leaf fan, does it bug you? If he's leaving anyway, do you give a shit where he's going? The fact that it's a rival, would that matter to you? Detroit is still in the division too, and yet I have a feeling if he signs in Detroit July 1st, it's a big meh. If he signs in Ottawa on July 1st, I think it's more than a meh. I think there's an opinion on that. I think there is an uprising, an upheaval about that. We'll see. I was going to wait and do this show on Thursday afternoon. Brad Treliving is speaking Thursday morning, Leafs press conference. I was going to wait and do it after that. I've heard Brad's press conferences before. I don't believe there's any chance he's going to say anything of interest, so I decided not to be bothered, not to wait, and just go ahead with this now. If I'm wrong, if he says something of interest on Thursday morning, we'll check back in here on Thursday afternoon and get something out for you then, but I think it's highly unlikely. More corporate speak. And that'll be that. So we'll wrap this one up here. There may or may not be more this week. If not, we'll be back on Monday with Rob. And next week, you're also going to hear from Keegan Matheson from MLB.com. We'll talk some Blue Jays with him. And his new book, The Franchise, in stores next week. We'll talk to him all about that. So that should be fun as well. We'll wrap this one up here. Thank you so much for listening. Take it easy on me on social media if you didn't love this. But look forward to hearing from you at Tall Can Audio. Have yourselves a great day. My name is Matt Robinson. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Yo, can warriors and chicken